Hey Printlife, welcome back to another awesome shop tour. Bruce from Printavo here, but we've got Jacob Deitel out of Los Angeles joining us. Really excited. He is the founder and CEO of US Standard Apparel. This place is absolutely bonkers. Very excited to be able to show you a fully verticalized manufacturing company. Am I describing it properly?
You are.
Okay. All right, well, I'm going to turn it over to Jacob, let him show us around his facility here in Vernon, California. All right, so first of all, just tell us about US Standard Apparel and how you got started, why you started this company.
You bet. Good morning. My name is Jacob Deitel, co-founder of US Standard Apparel. We started about 4 years ago. A lot of my friends have streetwear brands, Union, Born and Raised, Awake, Girls Don't Cry, and they all wanted help running production for their brands. Being a production manager for one brand is complicated. Being a production manager for multiple brands is not a great idea from my experience. I'd been buying fabric from SAS, who's been one of the West Coast premier knitters for the last 20 or 30 years. Sean, the owner of SAS, and I decided to become partners and form US Standard Apparel. Domestic textile business is pretty difficult. Apparel manufacturing, especially blanks and or full package, is a much more scalable business. So we did that, give or take 4 years ago. It occurred to me in the process that if Union wants this hoodie, Undefeated wants this hoodie, Born and Raised wants this hoodie, if I'm making something that ticks all those boxes close enough, that's a much more scalable business. So from there, we kind of shifted to our stock program or blanks, and we've grown since then.
Wow. I have a lot of questions, especially around capital and just doing it, but maybe I'll save that for when we get inside so people could see the scale at which you guys are running this business too. Because it's like, all right, you start it, but I don't know, how you buy all this stuff and the equipment and the machinery and all these things, you know, right out of the gate.
So we didn't. Initially, and I'll show you for reference as we walk through, my office was the sofa. We had no employees. And it was me taking purchase orders from companies we were working with, John Elliott, Mad Happy, a lot of brands in our space that wanted full package production and getting a production deposit. I would then be taking fabric that SAS would be knitting because USSA and SAS are partners. We would then work with outside contractors for cutting and sewing, garment dye, finishing, everything down to a finished product. During the pandemic, when everything shut down, we realized how vulnerable we were in the fact that we were outsourcing our actual production. A lot of places that we worked with wanted to continue making mass because there was more money there in the short term. Sure. So that was a great learning lesson for us, and that we needed to build that in-house. So a year and some change ago, we started to build in-house cutting and sewing, and I'll show you that and then also kind of give you the gist of where that's headed. We're planning to double or triple this year.
Got it. And what do you mean by vulnerable as well? So like, was the business going to other companies that were fully verticalized or?
I mean, there aren't really any companies in the United States that are fully verticalized. We didn't control the widget.
Got it.
So if our cut and sew partner is making more money with masks and they think that's the move in the short term, we're then left unable to fulfill POs that we have for garments. So it was more of a learning lesson that we need to really own all means to production to the extent possible, not necessarily for the profitability, but for the control.
Okay, cool. Let's do it.
Let's hit it.
How many square feet is this facility?
So this building in total is 170,000 square feet.
Wow.
We have printing and embroidery down the street, which is about another 10,000 square feet. We have a garment warehouse, which is just for garment storage, 2 blocks away. That's 40,000 square feet. And then we have 3PL, DTC pick and pack about a mile away. I think that's 36,000 square feet.
All right. Trying to add this up, but I'm not going to do public math on it. But
no, me neither.
Close to 300, it sounds like.
We're getting there. This is our kitchen and lunchroom.
Oh, this is decked out.
Super pleasant. I never eat here. I'm always at my desk. But if we throw parties for management or front office, they're always going to be in there.
Is this a safe?
It is.
What, are you able to share what's in there or no?
It's nothing interesting, but yeah.
Does this come with the building?
Yeah. I mean, we didn't build this. Samples.
Oh, cool.
Nah.
There's no cash, but...
Absolutely not. Everything is cashless these days. All right, so this is where it happens. Anything that we produce, we knit on site. Historically, as we run through, and I'll give you the gist, we had 150 knitting machines, which is far more fabric to produce than we can cut and sew. So we've been disassembling that as we've been building out sewing. Two main ways to make garments. I'm sure a lot of your audience knows, but I'll break it down just for clarity. Garment dye and piece dye. So if you're looking at these, the rolls that are a creamish color, almost white, those are PFD, which is prepared for dye, whereas the ones that are already dyed black, those are piece dye. Most large-scale production, especially any imported blanks, which is a different price point in a different market, morning, sir. Those are going to be piece dye. It's a less expensive way to make clothing, but it's also planning ahead. You have a lot less range, you have a lot less flexibility. So if I have a customer that wants 5,000 purple hoodies in 2 weeks, I could never do that with piece dye. So most of what we run is going to be PFD, which is cutting and sewing the garments with shrinkage on them and then garment dyeing them per order.
Got it.
So this is the beginnings of our sample room. This is just being built. This was racks of clothing about 3 weeks ago. That got moved to our new warehouse because all clothing is over there. As soon as it comes out of sewing, it ships over there. So this entire room is going to be sample sewing.
Just samples?
Yeah.
Wow. And by samples, when you say that, that's like, hey, here's some of them to approve before we go into mass production? Or
yeah. So if you're a new brand or customer and you don't want to run our stock program, you want something more specific, which a lot of larger brands do, then we're going to develop your line. We're going to run samples here, get the fit approved, make sure everything's good to go before we go into production.
And how many folks will work in here doing all of the custom sample sewing?
I think once it's all set up, somewhere between 20 and 30.
Wow. Okay. And managing this size of team, how many people work here?
Around 200.
Okay. And I'm assuming you have it like a very good hierarchy then with, 200 or so people as a good management, or how is it structured?
We have a really strong team. Yeah. Roles and responsibilities are pretty clearly defined. Hierarchy less so. I mean, everybody has somebody that they're touching base with and checking in with. But it's a very evolving organism in that we've grown so much. I mean, since coming back from COVID, we've grown somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000%.
Wow.
I like to use the term building the plane in the air.
Yeah.
So this next year, we're going to be scaling a lot more, but we're also going to be putting into place much tighter SOPs, really dialing in the infrastructure, because we've grown really fast.
Where has that been the growth of e-commerce for brands, or is that just word of mouth and more brands coming to you?
Everything we do is word of mouth. The vast majority of our business is referral. We are going to start advertising this year because most large brands in LA we have relationships with. I need to be selling blanks to the biggest screen printer in Tennessee, or a huge print operation in Milwaukee that's running Taylor Swift merch. Those are things that are not really in our sphere, which is streetwear or fashion.
Yeah.
But huge units, huge business, and a large part of what we want to focus on this year.
So explain this also. So, I see all these blank PFDs here, right, that are ready to dye, you're saying. So this comes in from the knitting department, which we'll see. And then the other one's the piece dye. But the main difference is that those are already set up, or those already come in dyed from some other facility, or?
So I'll give you the gist, and we'll run through knitting. When you're knitting fabric, either jersey or fleece, which is all we produce here, knits, you're doing it as graze goods, right behind you. It's called graze goods. That fabric, and I'll show you that as we walk through, that still has to go to finishing.
Okay.
So for fleece, then it's going to go for brushing and bleaching. For jersey, it's going to go for bleaching. Then it's going to come back as PFD. So all these rolls that we're passing, for the most part, are PFD. That's fabric that still has shrinkage on it. So you're cutting and sewing it by lot. The building across the street is where we do all of our cutting. We're going to move that in-house the next 4 months, and I'll show you where we're going to place it. Everything being as centralized and without having to move anything as humanly possible is how we'll scale up efficiency and bring down costing. PFD fabric is then cut and sewn into garments. Piece dyed fabric that's dyed at the dye house, it's generally then laundered to get out whatever shrinkage you can, and then it's just being cut and sewn, you have a finished garment.
Wow, so it's laundered, mass quantities.
It's laundered on the roll.
Got it, okay.
Whereas for garment dye, it's all laundered / processed / washed in a finished garment.
Okay, wow. And are all of these rolls of fabric the same types of fabric here? Or are these all different types of, because it looks the same visually for me, but.
It's a lot of different fabrics. It is all either jersey or fleece. Mm-hmm. Where, say, for reference, when I say we only do knits, we don't do wovens. So there's no denim, there's nothing that you would make khakis out of. It's all jersey or fleece or some variation of.
And has that been your guys' focus? Is we mainly do maybe tees and hoodies. I mean, you mentioned hoodies a lot, but do you try to stick to waist up, or do you do everything top to bottom?
It's more of a material. So jersey or fleece, but anything in that sphere.
Okay.
Shorts, shorter shorts for women. We do activewear styles. So we produced all the fabric originally for the Skims program.
Oh, cool.
Which was cotton spandex and beautiful. Mm-hmm. But anything in that sphere.
Got it. Very cool. That's all right. All right, real quick, I got to tell you something. This is really interesting, and here's why. We formed a company called Printavo. You may have heard of it, but it has 3 different brands right now: Printavo, Inksoft, and Graphics. So we're all sister companies now, a big happy family. What we're able to do is Printavo's managing your shop management and workflow organization. Inksoft can run your website and handle online stores at scale. So running multiple different stores for fundraisers, schools, company stores, and everything in between. And Graphics Flow is a brand new product to be able to help reduce all the back and forth with art. So it has a huge art library that you can put on your website so customers can see and pluck what they want. Plus, you can also be able to collect different ideas and send them to customers to approve as well. Really, really cool. Plus, in-app editing. It's like Canva, but specifically for shops. All right, check it out. All those brands are on Printavo.com. That's Printavo.com. All right, thanks.
But as we're walking, fabric, and then you'll see cuts. So rolls go across the street. It's all cut by lot. Cuts are coming back. Those will then go into the sewing line, and that's when we're going to have finished garments. Mm-hmm. Then finished garments right behind you are going to ship to our garment warehouse, which is 2 blocks away.
Okay.
So part of opening that and building that was to get space cleared up and not store garments here so we can increase sewing and also increase fabric storage. But brands like John Elliott, Amiri, Supreme, those are all piece dye. Those are all planned out a good amount of time in advance, and then their seasonal buys are put in, fabric is dyed, garments are cut and sewn. It's a cleaner way to make clothing in some respects. It's less alive. If you look at the hoodie that I'm wearing that has color variation and difference around the seams, the same thing on my sweatpants, you can't achieve this with piece dye. Garment dye is a more artisanal process. There's more variance. It's generally more expensive. There's generally a bit higher of a damage rate because it's going through processing. But for what we do, if you need 200 orange hoodies tomorrow, and by tomorrow I mean 2 weeks, that would be the only way that we can fulfill that. It's a big part of our business.
Are those the types of orders that you get here for manufacturing and production?
It very much varies. Now that we're starting to open up and do business with people kind of directly outside our sphere, absolutely. Because if we think about how many brands there are in Los Angeles, let alone the United States, a lot of them are not large. So a big part of the focus this year also is automating our systems where if you do need 200 orange hoodies, we can process those automatically. You place an order, goes from the warehouse, goes to dye, comes back for QC, you're paying for it, you're picking it up or shipping it, no problem. Because if you do 50 of those a day, that adds up quite a bit. Historically, we're working with larger brands and larger companies, but we're going to start doing both.
Do you have a minimum order quantity?
We stock black fleece and black and white tees. If you're buying a stock color, no, you buy 50 t-shirts.
Got it. And that's what US Standard Apparel is now, is that you guys are stocking to wholesale to screen printers and folks doing embroidery to be able to sell to that customer. Cool. And we'll link to the description below so people can check those out.
Fantastic.
For folks that are curious too, like what is a comparable brand or folks that like the realm of companies? Like, is it more this sort of streetwear type of fit and style and feel, or?
Yes and no. So I would think the biggest comps for us in Los Angeles would be Los Angeles Apparel, which is a larger operation. I mean, he's been in business for decades. It's a different animal. That being said, the hoodie I'm wearing, the sweatpants I'm wearing are all private label styles. They're a bit more specific. They're a bit more oversized, which is what I prefer. Our stock program, it's pretty much true to size because it has to work for hundreds of brands.
Got it.
So it's deeply designed. Making simple things are not simple, as we know. Yeah. It also has to be somewhat straightforward and transferable so that Stussy can run it, but also Tesla can run it. As we all know, last couple of years, the world's gone crazy.
Yeah.
A big part of that has been the commodities market. And in that is cotton and cotton yarn. Most of what we run here is 100% cotton. And actually, while we're here, majority of our stock program is EcoCycle, which it's 50% recycled, 50% sustainable. And sustainable is either going to be organic or BCI. All of that yarn we bring in from either Spain or India. There's no large-scale recycled yarn in the United States that's processed here. We bring it here, we knit it all here on site, which we can look at next, and it's all cut and sewn in America. Any standard conventional cotton, which mostly comes from the Carolinas, like that's all sourced domestically and then knit here. But from the yarn stage up, we're producing entirely in Los Angeles.
Wow, interesting.
But
so there's no large, you're saying there's no large scale recycling of fabrics here, or what?
Of yarn spinning.
Yarn spinning, okay.
So the largest spinning facility in America is called Parkdale. Bam.
Parkdale.
Parkdale is located primarily in the Carolinas. They're phenomenal. We've been purchasing yarn for them for 20 plus years. They have something that they market as 100% recyclable or recycled yarn. The problem with that is when you're recycling yarn and breaking this back down into the yarn form, you're damaging it, you're reprocessing it. So it's gonna have holes, it's gonna be kind of shitty. It's not a nice product. So what we do instead is we do 50% recycled, 50% organic. Parkdale's not able to do that. So we have large scale yarn spinning facilities in India and Spain do that, and then we have that shipped here. Additionally, the waste from garments and products gets sent back on those ships because they're going to be empty, and that's then broken down into additional yarn.
And yarn as in literally like spools of yarn?
I'll show you.
Okay. Is that what all of these boxes are?
It is.
Yarn?
And that's what I was mentioning about the craziness of the world and commerce lately.
Yeah.
This room, it goes all the way back to the wall. It's about 3.1 million pounds of yarn. And then any given time, we have another 10 containers in process. That's coming in, that's going into knitting, finishing, cutting and sewing, and the continuous loop. But anything that I'm running continuously, we try to keep a healthy stock of.
Wow.
But yes, all these boxes are yarn.
Oh boy.
So this is 3N fleece, which is what I'm wearing. It's probably what you're wearing. And then underneath is jersey. 3N fleece is 3 different sizes of yarn. Jersey is 1. So I'm wearing 20 single, you might be wearing 18 single. The lower the number, the heavier the fabric. So say James Purse, they're very lightweight t-shirts, that's a 36 single. But all those boxes are yarn. This is a 3N fleece. You're setting up 3 different sizes, you're getting it all put together, and then it's knitting. And it's pulling from these spools and knitting grayish goods of fabric.
So it literally comes off of these spools here, up and over into this machine that's spinning and weaving it together into a fabric and down here. Wow. I mean, you can literally see it's a roll of fabric right below this thing. This like magical box thing. It's unbelievable. And it looks like in a circle, that's how it's created over top here. I don't know if you guys can see this very well, but how many of these sort of transformer-like machines?
How many knitting machines?
Yeah.
Right now we have, I want to say 120.
Wow.
We had 150.
What happened to the other 30?
You'll see them.
So how fast does that work? Like in an hour, how many yards of fabric maybe?
No idea.
So
I don't want to give you incorrect information.
Okay.
Garments, I'm pretty knowledgeable. Knitting, I have a somewhat tangible knowledge.
Okay.
But how long it takes to knit a roll, it very much depends on if it's jersey or fleece, how heavy it is. Everything that goes into the costing of fabric is the weight. The weight and the type of cotton.
And so everything that you were knitting there, that goes into the rolls that we saw at the beginning. Those are where all those sitting.
These then come from here to go to finishing. To either say be piece dyed black or a color, or for most of what we do, be bleached to be PFD. Then they'll go across the street for cutting.
And are these you're setting up? Is that why these are dark and?
No. So if we had everything knitting at all times, it'd be more fabric than 10 of our cutting sewing facilities can produce. Knitting is a much faster process than everything that goes into cutting and sewing.
Got it.
So these are all tubular jersey machines. These are actually old Hanes Vanguard Supremes that my partner bought from Hanes. They're either 60 or 70 years old, whereas all these fleece machines are mostly all Monarchs, which are Japanese, and they're 20 or 30 years old. So we have a machine shop on site where everything's maintained and kept operating, but older machines are historically better than brand new for knitting.
Interesting.
Yeah, kind of wild.
Yeah, it is really wild. So, I mean, what is the plans then for?
Oh, these will be running next week.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So they're getting.
No, it's when an order comes in. It's when I have a production. If
this is extra capacity.
If you're able to see all this, tubular T-shirts, which are a bit less expensive to produce, they have no side seam. So you have much less waste. You have less cutting. You have less sewing. You're cutting off the sleeve. You're cutting off the neck, and you're sewing the hem. It's less fabric loss, and it's also less time, and everything for sewing is the amount of time that it takes. So each of these different machines is a different body size. So say medium is 21 inches flat, which will be 42 inches circumference. That's one. And in America, it goes by 2-inch diameters. So medium's 21, large is 23, small is 19, but each of these machines is a different body size. And these are the fastest knitting machines. So when you asked earlier, what can that knit in an hour? And I'm really not sure. These are 4 to 5 times faster. So whatever that's doing in a day, these are doing 4 to 5x. So when these are rocking, you can do hundreds of thousands of yards, which is hundreds of thousands of garments, but then you're not going to be running them continuously.
Got it. And then your bottleneck, you're saying, on the sewing side anyway. The
cutting and sewing.
Yeah.
That's a slower process.
Yeah.
Even as we scale that, and I'll show you what we've built and then what we're building for reference, even as you scale that, this is still always going to be faster. So as we continue to grow, stocking fabric that we're running regularly, having that ready to go, and then running these, as we get low. Getting more adept at planning and being less responsive.
Yeah. How do you think about predictive ordering and stocking and inventory and,
Full disclosure, we're really just getting into that.
Yeah.
Getting our entire system put into and integrate with an ERP, knowing what we have, knowing what we're selling, seeing what patterns are seasonally, style-wise, etc. I mean, that's all going to be a big focus for this year. When earlier I used the term building the plane in the air, growth has been so explosive that we really haven't put those systems in place. Now we are.
Got it.
It's been very intuitive.
Yeah.
Which historically has been okay, but not how we scale.
Well, we had the founder of AS Color on the podcast, and it's really his brain. It's just, hey, look, here's historically what we're looking at. Here's some of the data. We'll mesh it all together, and this is our best guess.
I've been doing that thus far. I feel like there has to be more of a science to it, so I want to explore that.
Yeah.
But yeah, thus far it's been intuition.
Gotcha.
So, these are greige goods. This is fabric directly as it comes off of knitting before it goes to get finished to become PFD.
And
that's why these have a bit more of a yellow hue to them.
These aren't as long as the ones that were in the...
They're not as wide.
Or wide, yeah, as the ones in the other facility or the warehouse.
It's different fabrics are going to have different widths. Sometimes much tighter knits, you're going to have to do it at a more narrow width. In general, you want to knit as wide as possible because when you're laying fabric out and you're putting down a marker to cut it, the wider it is, the more play you have.
Got it.
Because one of the biggest places where there's loss and or inefficiency is in the cutting. So if I'm laying out this body panel and I'm laying out this sleeve, the wider the fabric is, the more play I have to put this sleeve here, to put this pocket there. You have more room.
How do you keep up with some of the different trends, right? Like, it seems like the last 5 years, maybe things are boxier or stiffer type of fabric. Maybe before, you know, I don't know, maybe more tri-blend type of softer, fitted type fabric. Like, is that, does the fabric manufacturing part of it, do you have to constantly look to the brands to be the leader of what you guys need and you're pulling along, or are you sort of trying to develop fabrics that they may like and pushing that, or?
We don't have anything forward-facing in that you can't buy one t-shirt and one hoodie from us. We will this year, but we're making things for brands.
Got it.
So there's not a ton of guesswork. It's what they want to run. Keeping in mind, I started give or take 4 years ago. It's been very much 100% cotton, not a lot of tri-bends, not a lot of mix. And it's been a lot of open-end cotton, which for, say, streetwear, Undefeated, Supreme, Union, it's a bit drier of a hand feel. Whereas ring spun, which are the two primary types of cotton yarn, that's a lot softer. So we do both. And then there's outliers like Supima. Like all of Amiri's fleece and jersey is Supima cotton, which is the most expensive, really, really soft, beautiful, buttery, but it's a very different thing than if you're looking at a Stussy t-shirt.
Would you expand into doing those types too, or no?
We do.
Oh, you already do it. Got it. I mean, you must have a maintenance staff right here on hand to be able to keep all this machinery.
Oh, yeah. I don't think we see them right now, but they're running around at all times. I mean, knock on wood, things break down pretty irregularly, but having people on site and saving that time. So both a machine shop and maintenance staff for the knitting machines, and then also a full on-site mechanic for sewing.
Got it. Just for quick reference, this one, I just want to showcase this one. Maybe I could get a light in here to, this thing is insane.
This is beautiful, right?
I mean, this must be, hopefully you can see it, I know it's dark in here, but 3 or 4 times the size of that one we saw running before.
So part of why this is so much larger and specific is because this is for novelties.
For what?
Novelty. And by that I mean, say, stripes.
Okay.
So most of what we're knitting is a solid color. It's going to be PFD or it's going to be piece dye. This is taking yarn dyed colors and then knitting them into stripes or patterns. I don't make much of that, but say historically my partner did millions of yards a year to Walmart of a particular stripe. That's what these larger machines are for. These are some of the ones that we've been taking down and moving to continue to create space for sewing, because it's not something we run a lot of.
I'm gonna ask you this maybe uncomfortable question. Why, obviously so much of this is moved overseas, I'm assuming labor is cheaper and everything like that. Seems like having it here allows you guys to be very quick and responsive to customers' needs. Is that the biggest advantage of being here, or is it, you know, do brands more so want the made in the USA, you know, as a marketing aspect too, or what are your thoughts?
Both. So a very popular term right now is onshoring, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Doing business with other parts of the world is prohibitively difficult, more so than it was, you know, 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago. Shipping, the way that imports and duties work, everything that goes into that. So one, being able to touch and see your product and respond faster is huge. It's very much a price point consideration. So most large programs in the US that are, say, running merch, making Billie Eilish t-shirts or things in that vein, they're doing it on imported blanks because of price point. You can't make a $3 t-shirt here. I can sell you a $7 t-shirt here, And if we're doing hundreds of thousands of units, maybe it can be in the sixes, but I can't make a $3 t-shirt here. With the cost of labor, with the cost of knitting, quality is generally going to be a different animal. All that's piece dyed, all that's cut and sewn by the millions. We're making things much smaller batch. There's a lot more attention to detail. There's also a lot of programs that have to be made in the US. So any of these higher end brands we're talking about, or say Harley Davidson's domestic program, that has to be made in the US.
Okay.
So part of us continuing to scale, being prepared for those. US military garments have to be made in the US. So things like that, those are really a focus for us. And then also building out our blanks program, we haven't scratched the surface there. But if Gildan, Bella Canvas, et cetera, those are the own animal. When print shops or customers want something that is made in the US and it's garment dyed, and that's a noticeably different product and isn't just a blank, I mean, that's very much our market.
Got it. That's cool. It's like a very specific niche. Do you think you would expand, or maybe you already have, to have, you know, a sub company that's overseas that can handle maybe the larger quantities, or companies that want to be at a different price point? Or no, you say, hey, let's just focus here. This is going to be our niche.
Interesting question. You can't out Nike. So I don't see a world in which we could go up against Gildan or a large incumbent company like that that's doing 5-6 million garments a week. It's a very different animal and a very different infrastructure. That being said, we're looking at setting up sewing in central Mexico. Not in lieu of this, but in addition to. So we would be knitting and cutting fabric here. We'd be sewing it there. That direct labor costs of just the sewing would allow us to compete a little bit closer. A lot of large companies would prefer to work with us, at least when we're having one-on-one conversations. But the price difference between, again, say a $275 t-shirt and a $675 t-shirt, it's too dramatic. So if there's a world in which I can cut our direct labor costs just for a program like that, and then we're at a $375 t-shirt or $4 t-shirt, that's where that would come into play. But as far as completely offshoring and or setting up anywhere that we have to be on a boat with the state of things.
Interesting. Yeah, we always talk a lot about niches, right? And figuring out your space and where you're really good at. But, you know, at your scale, like, because how many garments a week? So you talk about Gildan being, you know, 4 to 5 million or so. Where are you able to say where you guys are at per week?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. And also, we're going to grow 2 to 4x this year. And a big part of that, building out our niche. So we don't really sell to screen printers across America right now. We don't advertise in that sphere. We don't really exist. We've never been to a trade show. That's something that will change this year.
Yeah.
I don't know how many printables are sold in the United States annually. I would imagine it's hundreds of millions.
Yeah.
Like 2 screen printing shops across America. We expand to 5 or 10% of that, our entire business changes. So changing what we do to try to enter a market that is not our core competency, that makes a lot less sense to me than really scaling and then trying to expand into a market that is a big part of what we do.
Sure. Makes sense. Cool.
So as we get up here, this room is new. So maybe 6 months ago, it was all knitting machines. But when I said we had 150 and now we're down to 120, and we'll probably end up at 110 in the next few months, a big part of that is expanding sewing in-house. And right now it's growing about once a month. I'll show you where it's going to be going. Oh, right behind you, sir. Morning. So when garments come back from dye, good morning. They head over into QC. So they're going to be trimmed, they're going to be inspected. If there's any loose seams or things that occur during garment dye, they're going to be repaired. They're then going to come over here for press, fold, box, and shipping.
Can we see that QC aspect? Is that every single one?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, you see going through, literally trimming. That's unbelievable.
It's part of the process. But that's also part of the cost of running product as garment dye. Piece dye is less expensive, it's more straightforward. Garment dye, a lot of these colors, you're not going to get nearly the same process as you would with piece dye. And that's a big part of what a lot of our customers like to run, especially at the higher end and private label programs. So everything comes through here, gets pressed, gets boxed, goes to the warehouse directly 2 blocks away. Monday, all this is being moved out of here. This is getting taken to the other warehouse, so all clothing as it leaves sewing is going to go directly over there. If you can see like boxed behind you or palletized down there, it gets shipped directly over there. And then all these lines of sewing are going to continue over here. So I think we just bought another 30 or 40 sewing machines. Those will then continue and come all the way to here. Then in the next 2-3 months, this row of machines is going to be coming down. And then from that space over, we'll set up cutting. So then we'll really be doing everything physically in-house. Because the less we're moving it, the less handling. I mean, that's where our efficiency goes up, our economy of scale goes up, our costing goes down. Because another big thing entering like the printables market at as high a scale as we can is going to be making a lot more product and bring down the cost of that product, which is going to happen in one fell swoop.
There's so many people here, and just looking at some of the sewing, it's a very skilled job.
Absolutely.
Where do you find, like, do you have a, an HR team or something that's constantly recruiting and training, or?
Good morning.
How does that work?
I don't know how it is in the rest of the country. In Los Angeles in particular right now, there's a lot of feast or famine. What I mean is that a lot of places are going out of business, and there's a few places that are very busy. We're very fortunate and blessed to be somewhere that's very busy. So having constant work and continuing to grow, it makes it a very attractive work environment. Also, we pay people well. Most people are making above minimum wage. Most people have an opportunity for incentives based on performance. We threw 2 Christmas parties. Like, taking care of the people that make this possible is deeply important and a big part of what we do. Like, we wouldn't exist otherwise.
Do a lot of folks then refer people?
Yeah.
I gotta imagine,
The vast majority is sewers referring other sewers.
Got it. And you can incentivize that or
yeah, absolutely.
They want to encourage, especially if others are closing down, like you said, too.
It's wild out here.
Why do you think others are closing down?
The barriers to entry are getting higher. Most large programs that are in the US, there's not a lot of places that can accommodate it. And also just the pure, when you talked at the very start about capitalizing this and financing this, and we're completely private, and we've done this organically from when we started, it's a monster.
Yeah.
So if I get a huge program from when we're knitting fabric to cutting and sewing it, to dyeing it, to printing it, to finishing, to shipping it, the least amount of time that's going to be is 4 months. And then for a lot of large customers, you're going to be extending terms. Like, managing the larger programs that are made in the US, there's a lot of complexities to it. Like for Amazon or Gap, they generally do net 90 terms. So you're doing 4 months to actually make the product, then another 3 months before you're getting paid.
Wow.
I don't give anybody net 90 terms, just for the camera and for the record. I generally, the longest we stretch for really large customers is net 30.
Yeah.
But say for Amazon, we'll meet them in the middle at net 45. But there's not a lot of places that can, 1, produce the scale that they're looking for, and then 2, manage that entire process.
Yeah, I'm a little bit flabbergasted by net 90 plus the manufacturing time. It's just,
it sounds
the cash
wild.
flow is impossible.
Very precarious at times, but all part of managing growth. The other part of it is, I don't know anywhere else except maybe Bayside, which I think they do a lot of their sewing outside of the US, but I don't know anywhere else that's knitting their own fabric, finishing their own fabric, cutting and sewing garments. Running the whole widget really gives us direct control. And also full accountability. If you're a large scale contractor, production facility, and you're buying fabric and cutting and sewing it, there's something wrong with the fabric, it occurred over there. There's a headache here, you only have to call me. And hopefully there's very few headaches.
Wow. Can we see some of the sewing too?
Oh, of course.
Close?
So this room will be expanding. In the next couple weeks, this will continue all the way over and be full of sewing machines. This room, in general, is more complex fleece styles. So things that are taking a bit more attention to detail, things that are a bit slower, those are generally done on this side.
I think there's just such an underappreciation for, I think everybody knows everything's made by hand, but there's such an underappreciation for the skill level. I mean, you know, I don't know how many different machines are here, but if you look at this one's very different, right? Then this one's very different. There's elastic bands over here. You know, there's the sleeves, the collars, the bottom,
I mean, if you're looking at this operation versus this operation versus this operation, I mean, they're all different sewing machines. They're all different operators.
Yeah.
So that's also a big part of what goes into sewing. How many different operations, how many different times it has to go from, you know, one sewer to another.
And then these are literally being trimmed. I mean,
oh, every single piece by hand.
this is a pretty unique,
oh, the carts?
yeah, cart here to have those poles on the side to be able to hold them taller. A lot of times they tend to fall over, and folks that use carts with no poles on the side.
So those are PFD coming out of sewing. They'll be inspected, they'll be partially trimmed, then they'll be bagged and boxed and sent to the warehouse.
Do you have more business than you can take, or do you feel you guys are pretty even? Like, you have to turn down a lot of work?
Which is a wonderful problem, and also part of us scaling this next year, but also determining what business makes sense. Do we want to make 5,000 really complex specific hoodies, or do we want to make 50,000 somewhat standard hoodies? And even if that price difference is pretty dramatic on the 5,000, like to scale the business, continue to grow, like we definitely want the more straightforward product to produce. But we do both.
Is there a happy spot to saying, this is the sort of the size or the revenue, like maybe, I don't know, 50 million, and this is sort of our sweet spot where we get less profitable maybe over time, or is it just we want to continue to grow?
I hope to have that answer this year.
Okay. And it's hard to figure out. I don't know, you know, it just takes a lot of time, it seems, but.
No, and again, so much thus far has been intuition and what I think makes sense, or we collectively agree makes sense. But as we grow and as we have more information and we use that, you know, more concisely, like, I'm sure there's good answers there.
Yeah.
But we're not there yet. So the room we just left is going to double in the next few months. This room can't get any bigger. This whole space has to be clear for fire safety. So February, maybe March, this will then move to a second shift.
And you can't go up, I'm assuming. Like, a lot of these facilities, it seems, are one floor. Is that like an efficiency thing, or is it just how it's built? And...
I'm not sure. I know that historically American Apparel, like, they had, I think, 6 or 7 floors.
Okay.
But the why behind it, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I think a big part of it is having to hang the lights and the power and everything that goes with it, and needing the space above. Because most sewing facilities you go into, they're not low ceiling. Like, they look similar to this, and I have to assume there's a reason for that, but
yeah,
I'm not 100%.
What do you feel like, as an owner, your biggest challenge is going to be this year too? I mean, obviously there's a lot of growth here happening and managing that, but are there any others that you know, kind of keeps you up or that you're thinking about?
Responsibly scaling. I didn't mention earlier, a third of our roof is solar panels. All the lights.
Really?
Absolutely. Powers the vast majority of the facility. All the lights in here are LED. Been audited by Stussy, Gap, the US government, Carhartt. We're doing everything the best way possible. Continuing to do that at a, you know, at a 2, 3, 4, 5x, and how we do that, how we fund that. I think the first priority this year is really just determining concisely where we're at and then where we want to go. Because again, we've grown really fast.
Yeah. Like,
now would be the time to evaluate and then you know, continue to grow.
Yeah. All right. So this is US Standard Apparel. What is the website so people can check it out?
Good question. www.usstandardapparel.com.
All right. So USStandardApparel.com, you guys can check them out. They've got tons of awesome wholesale. They're starting to work with a ton of screen printers too now. Are you guys going to be at any trade shows coming up?
Yes.
Okay.
We got to get organized on that.
All right. Well, at least you can see on the website.
Before I forget, that's our online portal that we just built. But for a good reference of what we make, Instagram.
Perfect.
And that would be at enter EcoCycle.
At
enter EcoCycle.
Enter EcoCycle. All right. We'll put that in the description as well.
Awesome.
Thanks, Jacob. Appreciate it.